Our feet have what's called foot posture.
How is the foot putting input into the brain?
These nerves, which are like your eyes to the ground, our nervous system was shaped through walking.
Welcome to the Vitalist Podcast, where healing meets wonder. This is your space to gain transformative knowledge, deepen your mind-body connection, and awaken your human spirit. If you're ready to connect with your innate potential, embrace life's challenges, and expand what you believe is possible, this is the place. Get ready to slow down, be moved, and live like a true vitalist. Dr. Emily Splichal is known as the Movement Longevity Doctor. She's a functional podiatrist, a human movement specialist, author of Barefoot Strong, and CEO of Naboso. With over 23 years in the health and fitness industry, Dr. Splichal has positioned herself as a global leader in the topics of postural alignment, human movement as it relates to barefoot science, foot-to-core integration, and sensory integration. This is like right up our alley. I want to know how the foot works with the nerve system in so many ways because we don't learn much about the foot in school. So take me into the feet. Why the feet?
So I moved to New York City when I was 20, and my background is actually in forensics. It's not in any sort of movement.
That wasn't in your bio.
No, that's not in my bio. It's a fun thing. It should be a fun fact that is in my bio. And I was in New York working at John Jay College of Criminal Justice doing DNA research. Completely miserable, looking out at the city and everyone moving. And I was like, I just want to move. So anyway, I quit that track and became a personal trainer.
Wow.
And then going through personal training, teaching classes, I started getting hurt.
Okay.
Because I'd used my body so much as a gymnast. So I was like, I have to do graduate school. There were two requirements for when I was looking at graduate school. One is that I had to be able to stay in New York City because I had moved to New York City from the Midwest and it just spoke to my soul. And two, I had to be able to stay in fitness because fitness also spoke to my soul.
Yeah.
And I was like, those are my two requirements.
Okay.
I had one choice. Feet.
Podiatry. So most people think of a podiatrist like white coat guy fitting you for orthotics. You are so different than that. How do you approach the feet and how do you work with your clients?
Yeah, a big part of how I work with my clients as a functional podiatrist, so it's very important, is that was established because I was going to podiatry school while still working in fitness. So I was learning these things in school about Achilles tendonitis, plantar fasciitis, flat feet, whatever it was that we were learning. And then I would start looking at my clients a little bit different, or we were learning recommendations from our attending, our professors, right? And they were saying, this is how you would stretch the foot or the ankle. This is how you would strengthen it. And I'm like, I don't, that's not really correct, or that's not the only way. So early on in my podiatry training, I started to get doubts. Like, I'm starting to doubt the authorities who are teaching me because they're teaching in a very narrow window that the only way to stretch your calf is put your hands against the wall, one leg behind, drop your heel. And I was like, ah. And then I would hear the footwear recommendations, and it was only New Balance. So then I just started to kind of push and challenge a little bit more, stayed in fitness the whole time. Now I'm in residency, and residency was very surgical. Podiatrists in the United States have to be trained to be surgeons. But in my first year, it was fighting me internally even more. And I actually quit residency, and which I do not recommend to the listeners. So I quit. And I went back to school and I got my master's in human movement and from AT Still, and which is here in Arizona. And that is where I connected. Okay, here's my background in fitness and movement gymnastics. Here's my podiatric medical degree. And it was the bridge between them because I was like, okay, I have this. How do I bring it together? And my master's in human movement is what did that. And it happened to be at the exact same moment as the Born to Run, the Vibram 5 Finger. So the barefoot running boom was literally right here when I was going through my master's. So I dedicated my master's to barefoot science. Long story short, I had to go back to residency because it's the only way I could get licensed. Right. Played the game for a couple years, got licensed, and then from day one, I started practicing the way that I wanted.
Wow. Sarah and I had a similar experience in chiropractic school.
Really?
Because you're just learning, first of all, education and knowledge that's 10 years outdated. Yeah. And you're there to pass your boards and get your licensing. But if you're not looking into other tangential things in that occupation, you miss a lot of serving your clients.
Oh, yeah.
So I love that you kind of did this, extracurricular research,
zig and
right?
zag, right?
The zig and the zag, yeah, because it makes you so unique as a functional podiatrist. So break it down. Let's start with the mechanics of the foot before we get into like the sensory side, which is really fascinating to me. But just mechanically, what do the feet do? Why do we need the feet?
Yeah, from the biomechanical lens, which is what is taught in podiatry school and probably a lot of chiropractic school as well, is our feet are our body's foundation. Mechanically, structurally, our feet have what's called foot posture, just like the rest of our body has posture. And that foot posture, alignment, the arch height, ankle mobility, all of that mechanically dictates how the rest of your body will align. If you do not have a stable foundation, let's say your feet are collapsing into flat feet, overpronation, then there's a coupled rotation or unlocking that happens through your lower extremity to your lower back, pelvis, hips, and then the entire rest of the infrastructure is a little less stable. I try to use words like unlocked and locked, stable, unstable, or slow, like slower, faster. So a flat foot or an unlocked foot or pronated foot, those are all synonymous, is associated with a little bit slower stability. The hips, the pelvis, the lower back are going to stabilize a little bit slower. So let's say if I'm doing something, even picking up something heavy like a suitcase, or you're doing a squat. If you have flatter feet or an unlocked foundation, your center of mass, your center of stabilization, pelvis, hip, glutes are going to be just a little bit slower to stabilize your lumbar and the rest of your pelvis. And then that's where you could get hurt. Depending on who I'm talking to, I would go in a direction of either injury risk, performance, fall mitigation, right? Things like that.
Yeah.
So that's how I think of the foot mechanically.
So the slow, I haven't heard the slow and the fast. That's
Yeah.
really cool. Like the feet are going to recruit slowly what's required to keep that stabilization. What do you see most with your clients? Like, are people really slow in activation, or can you be over fast? Like you're compensating for something?
So yes, so you could be locked into like a dominant pattern. A great example, which is not necessarily pathological, but would be like a sprinter. So sprinters that I've worked with are on the edge of acceleration, which makes sense. That's why they're fast, right? But they are typically hypertonic. They're a little less mobile, right? So a little less flexible. Some of them may have had a history of being toe walkers when they were children, so they're very hypertonic in the lower extremity. Some may have an early heel lift as they walk now as adults, but those are the features that actually make them quick.
So what do you say? We have people that come in here and they're like, I'm flat-footed. I was born flat-footed. I've always been flat-footed. Is there like a genetic thing with feet? Or like take me back how the arches are developed, but kind of break the myths around flat feet.
Almost all children are born with a planus foot. Planus means flat. Planus does not mean overpronated. So those are very different. So if you just have a pancake foot, that is very different than if you are pronating. When you pronate, you're actually dropping the midfoot towards the midline of the body. And when you do that, you bring an internal rotation into the lower extremity. So it's really that coupled internal rotation. That's where all the negative or the impact could happen. Just having a pancake foot, no arch, doesn't have the same effect. So just kind of knowing that all children have a planus foot when they're born. And it's because the majority of the foot is cartilage when we're born, so it's actually not formed fully. It takes until the age of 7 to develop an adult arch. So I occasionally will be aggressive with arch supports for children, depending on what I see. So you can actually already, by like 3 years old, 4 years old, see overpronation, or what will be an overpronated unlocked foot in an older child by around that age. Doesn't mean necessarily I'll like push them towards orthotics, where others are just planus at 3 or 4 years old. A lot of pediatricians will say, oh, all children will grow out of their flat feet. And then I see them as a 10-year-old and I'm like, ooh, like mom, dad, we really need to get your child into an arch support or an orthotic because of the degree of overpronation. It's a little bit different. As far as the genetic propensity to have an overpronated, unlocked foot has to do with the connective tissue. That's what's genetic. And this involves bunions too, because I know that's going to be a question, so bunions are not genetic. The connective tissue integrity is what's genetic. And what predisposes bunion formation and that overpronated unlocked foot is the rear foot ligaments. There's over 100 ligaments in the foot. So there's a lot of opportunity for laxity to cause a dropping in the arch or an unlocking, a breakdown in the midfoot. A unlocked rear foot is less impactful than an unlocked midfoot. As soon as your midfoot starts to unlock and you have laxity in the midfoot, that's where you start to get a greater effect on injury risk, transfer of power, bunion formation.
Oh, it's the midfoot.
Things like that. It's in the midfoot.
So what do you tell women to do when they do have bunions? What's kind of your corrective or your game plan for them?
Yeah, so one, I want them to understand their foot type. So I'm not just saying like, oh yeah, you have a flat foot. Okay, doctor, right? I explain it and say, this is what I'm doing. What this means is unlocked, and I'll tell them unlocked. What does unlocked mean as far as bigger things? So I'm actually explaining it that way. Okay, so if they have a bunion, then I say, this is why you have it. I'm explaining their foot, their ligament laxity, right? That foot type cannot be reversed. Let's say it's a ligament lax, midfoot, rear foot pronation. It cannot be reversed. This is where I need you to understand, how are you standing? When you're doing dishes, or if you do a standing desk, if you're without shoes, when you brush your teeth, how do you stand? Are you engaged and actually rotating into a more neutral position? Or are you passive in your feet? Yeah. Well, if you're passive in your feet, you're going to progress your bunion, right? I don't care how many toe spacers you use, you will still progress your bunion. Right. So I need them to understand that, how to strengthen the foot, how to get into the intrinsics. There's 26 muscles in the bottom of the foot. So it's really about owning, identifying, being aware, and then doing the exercises.
Okay, let's get into the sensory side.
Okay.
Connect me. How is the foot putting input into the brain?
Hands and feet have special nerves that are called mechanoceptors, or just touch nerves. And these mechanoceptors are sensitive to very specific stimuli. And we use that stimulation to essentially read the surface that we're walking on. And I truly believe that every step that we take is slightly different. And every step that we take, the nervous system, the brain, the feet is auto-adjusting to maintain balance, auto-adjusting to absorb the impact forces, auto-adjusting to coordinate your hips and your pelvis so that we can walk the right way, right, and transfer energy. So you have to have these nerves, which are like your eyes to the ground, with every step that you're taking. And that's what the skin in the bottom of the foot is doing. That's what the nerves do. Play a very, very important role as far as balance, power, change of direction, energy transfer. So technically, when you strike the ground is supposed to vibrate and you are supposed to vibrate. So you strike it almost like two cymbals and you reverberate off of each other. When we move on unnatural surfaces, concrete as an example, concrete does not vibrate. When you strike concrete, it does not vibrate. You get this back reverberation, which means we're not moving or dancing with the surface like when you're on a trail, grass, wood.
Yeah, there's like friction and resistance in it.
Yeah.
Interesting. I noticed that because we walk on concrete back here. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I love being barefoot, but the concrete, it like bangs up your feet.
Your whole body.
Yeah, your whole body, whole body, everything.
Yeah. Other internal surfaces that are great are, I think like an old school dance studio. And just the floors give when you're walking on them. Think like an old building, right? And obviously it's creaky and stuff like that. Or here, kind of in a modern environment, would be like a suspended floor. Indoor tracks is another one. So suspended indoor tracks are actually tuned to a certain vibration that is more in harmony with your body. So some of the best world records as far as indoor track and breaking personal records and things like that are on very specific, highly tuned tracks.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
That's blowing my mind. Yeah, so I need a suspended floor back here.
That's what you're telling me. Yes, I encourage you to install a suspended floor, right? Just eat the cost of it, but it will totally be better for your body.
It would be such a change. Mm-hmm. When we put shoes on, What's affecting like the sensation that we get from the ground? Because there's got to be something's blocking it if you're throwing a shoe on instead of being barefoot.
Yes, 100%. And this is what minimal shoe companies will talk about a lot is you need the minimal, meaning minimal cushion, minimal shoe or minimal barrier between your foot and the ground so that you can feel and read every step that you're taking. That's true. I like them to go even further by talking about ground reaction forces, which is when your foot strikes the ground, so impact forces, are perceived as vibration. That is really what we're talking about here. And the footwear companies are like the tip of the iceberg, what they're talking about. There's so much more power under here. So if ground reaction forces is vibration, right? Remember, we're two symbols, we're striking the ground. The surface vibrates, we back reverberate, depending on what we're walking on, but we're both vibrating. So you're vibrating, that's the impact forces. Now imagine if you put cushion in a shoe and you're striking the surface with cushion, you have now damped that vibration. So some people would argue and say that's good because we get injured when we have too much impact, right? Overuse injuries, all of those stress fractures, shin splints, it's because of all that vibration. It's bad. It's actually not true. It is controlling and changing the relationship with the vibration and how we absorb it, how we relate to it, how we store it and transfer it. That's how I would rather look at it. But let's say you have cushion in your shoes. You're not going to get the vibration. You don't get the energy. You don't get the information on how you're striking the ground, which means you are moving with half of the information that you need to move accurately. And my focus when I work with especially athletes is movement accuracy. Okay. There's three facets of movement that I'm really into. First one is movement longevity, just like what does that mean, right? Second one is movement accuracy. So how are you moving? What is the quality at which you're moving? Your awareness, your perception of that. And then the third is movement efficiency. Movement efficiency is obviously energy transfer. It's very fascial based. It's effortless. It's graceful. So those are the ones that I like to speak about. The relationship with gravity transfers to accuracy and efficiency.
Wow, with gravity. So how can people tune more into like how they are connecting to gravity?
So gravity is everywhere, not just the vibration. That's how your foot relates to gravity is ground reaction forces, vibration. With the rest of your body, it is weight. So just weight on your shoulders. So just kind of feeling, connecting. It's actually a compressive hug also. So I consider gravity a proprioceptive hug, using things like compression apparel, weighted apparel, wrist weights, weighted vests, sleeves, kinesiology, taping. All of those are essentially turning up the perception of gravity. Even being in water, which is changing the relationship to gravity, you actually connect to resistance. So moving through water, you feel the resistance, which makes you feel your arm, you feel your leg. That's the first step in movement accuracy is you have to know where you are in space.
So is this the same thing you talk about body schema? Mm-hmm. Is that what you're referring to? Because it's a little different than like proprioception.
Body schema, by definition, is your mind's mental image of your body in space. Okay. So when we move subconsciously, so in the background, your brain nervous system is navigating how you would walk between these chairs, right? So something where there's external objects or other people and you have to be making very quick decisions on how you control your body and navigate the external world. So your brain is using this mental picture of your size and shape in space, which is your schema, to accurately navigate, movement accuracy, accurately navigate the external world. Okay, and proprioception is one of the inputs that shapes it. But then there's also vestibular, visual, mechanoceptive, interoceptive. So it's an interplay of all of them together to create schema. Where does that break down then? Best examples would be a concussion. So as soon as we have a concussion, you have this delayed perception of where you are in space. The accuracy of our movements and the accuracy of our schema can be either you're not sensing it well? That might be someone who's just 80 years old. Or could it be that it's just not coming to the nervous system fast enough? That could be the TBI or the concussion. A stroke. So when you have a stroke, you have to relearn. That is essentially re-strengthening the schema because there was an injury. But it's very, very powerful when you can start by connecting to your own body and where it is in space.
Yeah, and your lens of how you can approach the feet, because most people wouldn't look at certain neurological conditions by looking at the feet or how they move their body necessarily.
Well, yes. So the way that I connect the feet to this process is that it is our anchor, which is why when I teach people to do body schema-based work, regardless of what their profession is, craniosacral therapist, athletic trainer, physio, OT, doesn't matter, is get the shoes off, get the socks off, and you're cueing them. And if they're standing, let's say on the Naboso mat on a hardwood floors, to cue them to feel the texture, feel the hardness under the feet. So you have to guide them to then feel it. And I've worked with some craniosacral therapists that will say, okay, feel that. Now tell yourself, I feel the texture under my feet and I am safe.
This is something we have to learn to do. You know, is this not natural? I mean, I didn't learn to do this as a kid or as an athlete. Like, nobody talks about the feet, right? Like, they're completely missed. And they're, like you said, they are the anchor, they're the foundation. As soon as the feet hit the ground, the brain is getting all that information for the body. Yeah. So do people just not care? Do we not see it? Is it not shown in research?
I think we don't know what we don't know. Mm-hmm. So dance, maybe a little bit of martial art. And I was a gymnast for 13 years, and there was not even... Like, I wish someone were like, you know, when you point and you create tension in your foot, you activate this fascia line to your pelvic floor.
Yeah.
Like, I wish someone said that.
Oh, absolutely. Connect it, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So I try to do that. My daughter's 5, but I'm very into movement awareness for her. Having her barefoot, even though she was the only child on the playground barefoot. And I just think we don't know what we don't know. We inherently learn it. I was thinking about this the other day of kind of like when we move to pick something up and then you know to move to not hit your head. Like, we can feel when there's a wall right here, right? So I'll do that with patients and say, I want you to stand like a couple inches from the wall, shut your eyes, and I want you to feel the wall. Like, just take a moment and do you feel that? Yeah. Right? And if they don't, then we have to do some work on that, but we should feel that there's a change in energy even when you're close to another object, right? And it's about working that muscle, because it is a muscle, right? The mind-body image, the schema is a muscle that if you don't practice it or you don't strengthen it, you do lose this with age. And this is a huge contributor to falls. And there's research showing that the mind-body connection starts to become weaker with age. And that's why Tai Chi, yoga, practices like that are so beneficial as we age. And all the research is like, yes, Tai Chi reduces falls. But then no one is saying the reason why it's reducing falls is because it's strengthening their schema, right? That's really what it is.
Wow, that is so cool. Yeah, there is, like, you feel the energy and, like, you open up your perspective to how you are interacting with your environment, right? And it reflects it back in the body. It's just, it's so simple and it's, I don't know, it's so efficient, but it's just not taught at very basic levels. Okay, tell me, you did already allude to it, but how do the feet connect to the pelvic floor?
Your feet are connected to your core through fascia, through fascial lines that happens to be called the deep front fascia line, which runs from the tips of your toes, bottom of the feet, lower leg, inner thigh, deep hip, pelvic floor, diaphragm, continues up your neck to your tongue. So I will teach people how to activate their toe to tongue for stability, or their foot to core is the other way.
Wait, take me toe to tongue.
When you push your toes down into the ground and then you take your tongue and you push it into the pellet, at the same time, you should feel like there's this internal soft tissue skeleton. Technically, your fascia and your pelvic floor and these fascial lines are anti-gravity. So you actually want to be feeling a lengthening or a lightness, a lift. So that connection could be used essentially just as every hour if you stand for work, just kind of like, okay, reactivate your postural system. It could be used athletically, could be used when lifting weights. When I work with patients who are trying to strengthen their foot, for whatever reason it is, overpronation, plantar fasciitis, things like that, then that is a foundational exercise to everything I teach, is toes down, tongue to palate. Obviously, you're lifting your pelvic floor at the same time. And then you really want to be exhaling.
Tell me about the breath. Yes.
Yeah. So when our toes go down,
Okay.
your arch lifts.
Yes. Feel that?
And then you want to coordinate that with the exhale of the breath, which lifts the diaphragm. And then technically your pelvic floor, which is in the middle, is going to lift as well. So you are stacking your domes, or in yoga, they call them bandhas. So the way that I will teach that is you could inhale through your nose, belly rise, and then as you're exhaling, so as you're starting to exhale, your diaphragm's going to lift. As you're doing that and you keep exhaling, I want you to start to push your toes into the ground.
Okay.
Keep exhaling. I'll have someone exhale for 8 to 10 seconds. And as you extend your exhalation, that inherently is going to be a pelvic floor activation.
Oh,
So it's a way that you can get into the deep core pelvic floor without even saying anything about the pelvic floor. And then I'll do several cycles of those. Inhale, exhale for 10 seconds. Inhale, exhale for 10 seconds. And the entire time that you are exhaling is where you are activating your toes down, pelvic floor up, diaphragm up.
Wow, it's a lot of coordination there.
It is.
Take some
It
practice.
is. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And your foot has to be in neutral. So your foot cannot be unlocked. You have to first set your base, is what I call it. So you're going to stabilize your base, find a tripod, spread your toes, lift your arch, rotate into your hips, somehow stack your system. So you have to get your skeleton in the alignment that supports the myofascial contraction that we're going to try going after. Imagine if I was like squatting or doing bicep curls and my posture is like really bad.
You're starting from here? Yeah.
Yeah, like I have to put my body in a position.
To receive that information.
Yes.
I love that. So you're cueing like visual, like creating the pathways visually, and then the breath is what's really like putting it through the system too.
Yes. And then
It's very
so
different.
the visual, 100%. So as you're doing it, like I would do it with your eyes shut and like you see your toes pushing down. I want you to see your arch lift every time you do it.
People are going to rewind that segment and probably practice it a couple times.
Yeah, good. Encourage it.
Let's talk about walking, because everyone can relate to walking. Most people, they love walking. They go walking outside. They walk on a treadmill, which I also want to ask about. How should we be walking? Like, what should it feel like? Is there a pace? Is there a momentum? Like, walk us through it.
I talk a lot about walking, and the pace at which we walk is extremely important. And there is research showing that as your pace slows down, walking speed goes down, there is a correlation to increased morbidity and mortality. Part of movement longevity in general, is you have to walk. You have to keep walking. That is the most foundational movement pattern that we do every day. Our nervous system was shaped through walking, and that is huge, is to make sure that you are walking at a fast enough pace to feed the fascial lines. So walking at a fast enough pace hydrates the system. Walking at a fast enough pace gets our circulatory pump. So the calf is our second heart. You have to get enough contraction going to get the blood from your feet all the way to your brain. When you get increased circulation to your brain, it supports brain-derived neurogrowth factor, which is very cognitively protecting. So there's a lot of longevity benefits to walking fast enough. In order to walk fast enough, you have to have sufficient balance. So single leg stability is required for optimal walking. And then the predictor on that, what research shows, is if you cannot hold a single leg balance for 10 seconds, that is a predictor of morbidity and mortality. The other part of walking is that it's very fascial based. So walking by design is supposed to be effortless. It is not supposed to burn a lot of calories, even though people love to use walking as a way to lose weight. It is not designed to burn a lot of calories. And I will tell people this, and they're like, whoa, wait, right? And the reason is if there is something that is so foundational, functional, think, when we were in the wild hunting and stuff like that, you have to be able to go for a very long distance. So, and then still have energetic capacity to think, to do things, to move, right? So you cannot burn a lot of calories when moving. Most people are moving inefficiently, which means they're moving muscularly, not fascially. They're working harder than they should. Your foot type influences that. So if you have an unlocked foot, pronated, you are working harder than you should be. You are working more muscularly than fascially. So yeah, I think that the more that people can connect to the rhythmic aspect of movement, the fascial, you have to be able to feel the ground, to load the impact, to create the energy that's stored in your fascia, to release it like a rubber band. Yeah. If you can't, you move more muscularly. Biomechanically, you have to have a good range of motion in your big toe, your ankle, your pelvis, and your T-spine. Yeah. And if you don't have range of motion in all four of those, you will not move the right way.
And you can probably see this. If you watch people on the canal, you can see, is there spring, is there fluidity, or is it stiff and rigid? I feel like people are going to listen to this and be like, they're going to question, am I walking efficiently? Yeah. So how do you get them to feel it? Like, is there a way you can, how do you coach them?
So the first step is, one, feeling your body, right? So are you connected to that? Second is when we know we're walking at a fast enough pace, it feels like momentum. So when I was living in New York and I would travel and go to these other countries to teach. So I would be restricting my movement because of being in a different country and just primarily working on airplanes. Right. And I would just feel my system getting tighter. My pelvis, my T-spine, I was just like, wake up every morning and like, oh, my body is stiff. As soon as I would get back to the city where I would walk 20,000 steps easily every day, right? You just literally walk everywhere. Yeah. And I walk fast. And I get this pace. And I'm walking fast enough. And then if someone walks in front of you, when you're in a truly momentous state, I'm like, if you do not get out of my way, I'm going to like knock you down. I can't brake fast enough. I'm not walking muscularly. I'm literally riding the momentum. Yeah. I'm riding my fascia, which is the way that we were designed, because there's not a lot of muscular contraction happening when we walk. It's isometric. We don't have this like concentric, eccentric, we're not doing that when
it's not mechanical
walking. Yeah, right. It's very fascial based and it's momentous, and you're essentially falling in gravity. And I would, as soon as I would get back to New York, walk my normal pace, within like a day, boom, my body would be hydrated again. I'd get that range of motion. I'd be like, yes, I am back to where I am. Okay. One thing I will say here is that not everyone has the same pace, and if we change our pace, slow our pace, or quicken our pace to match whoever we're walking with, we actually become less energy efficient. My boyfriend is 6'5", I'm 5'2". So if I keep up with him, I'm now becoming very inefficient in my movement pattern. If he slows down to walk at my pace, he has shifted. So that's where you kind of want to understand that you have different paces, and the goal is not to be matching who you're with. It's understanding and feeling in your body how this efficiency works.
So is it better to open up your stride to keep up with him, or?
For me?
Yeah.
Yes. However, you guys have done my assessment. I have very tight pelvis and T-spine, which means it actually is hard for me. So we can feel within our body if we do a lot of walking, and people will say this like, oh, when I went either walking in the mall, holiday shopping, or whatever it is, you're traveling in Europe doing something, you went to the city for whatever reason, you're in an environment where you did a lot more steps than usual. Oftentimes people will say, my lower back is killing me, right? Like I'm feeling the stress because what's happening is you don't have the mechanical skeletal flexibility to walk at your momentous pace. So my focus to unlock my movement longevity as it relates to walking and walking speed, I have to put a lot of energy into unlocking my skeleton to allow that.
It's cool how that reflects different areas of the body. Like the feet are going to tell you based on walking where you need to unlock other areas. Yeah. So you do have a new book coming out.
I do.
I want you to it's probably about everything we're talking about, I would assume, but movement for longevity. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yes. So the book is called Sensory Sapiens, and it is how sensory-based movement is what unlocks longevity. And it is a lot about what we spoke about. Schemas in there, understanding breath, the different sensory input systems, how they relate to each other, footwear, understanding foot types.
And then you also have Naboso, your company. Tell us about your products. I've been using 2 specific products that I love, but what's so unique about your products? Because it's not like any other foot spacers or insoles that are on the market today?
Yeah, so Naboso is a sensory technology company, and we use texture as our sensory stimulus on all of our products to stimulate the mechanoceptors, so hands and feet. That's all of our products focus on those two parts of the body. You could, of course, use it on other parts like our release tools, but it's really around hands and feet. There's tiny little pyramids. So the texture is these tiny little 1.5 millimeter tall pyramids, triangles, that are across the entire surface of every product. So our mats, insoles on the inside of the sock, release tools, balance boards, weighted sticks. So a whole wide gamut of products that is intended to wake up the nervous system. Connects to activation and awareness. If you cannot feel your feet or hands, you're not going to be able to control the body as well. Strengthens. So when you bring sensory stimulation to the feet and the hands, you strengthen the small muscles, which is very important. And then recovery. And the recovery component is circulation. So texture actually increases circulation. And those are really the three parts.
I love the touch and texture. It's so unique. Like as soon as we put on those socks, it was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Like you really feel that sensory input. Yeah. So I'm very excited to share your products, and you've given a generous discount, which we'll share as well.
Awesome. Yeah.
Where can people find you? I mean, obviously with your book coming out, that's going to be great, but where can people find you, connect with you, maybe work with you one-on-one?
Yeah. So on Instagram, I am the Functional Foot Doc, and then my podiatry website is the same. So I'll just keep those so it's easy for the listeners. So the Functional Foot Doc Instagram, thefunctionalfootdoc.com goes to my podiatry practice. I see patients in Arizona in person, but I see patients virtually all over the world. And most of my patients, I'm not under insurance, so I'm direct care. So most of my patients have seen other providers, are frustrated, are not getting answers. In my practice, I do a lot of regenerative injections as well. So I try to look at things from a functional and regenerative perspective. I treat movement. So someone may come to me because of chronic hip, lower back, knee, shoulder, whatever it is, and they just want to see, is it coming from my foundation? Are my feet part of the story? Is it how my feet relate to the ground? Is that what is causing this? So sometimes I'll get patients for that as well. And I can treat almost everything virtually. Sometimes patients are surprised. And then for Naboso, the website is naboso.com, naboso.com.
Perfect.
The Instagram is naboso_technology. And then all of those different sites link out on YouTube, or you could just go to YouTube and search my name, search Naboso, Barefoot, Foot to Core.
Okay.
I have hundreds of videos on YouTube.
Yeah,
I've
very
been teaching
helpful.
all of this stuff for over a decade. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of videos and content, and some of the archives of webinars I've done actually give some really great information. Yes.
All right, everyone, check out Naboso. And Dr. Emily, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
If you like this episode, share it with a friend. For more conversations filled with awe and wonder, be sure to subscribe to the Vitalist podcasts. Till next time.